Hey, Star Wars fans, welcome back to the much anticipated, long awaited Lothal Library on Plagueis, Darth Plagueis, the novel that Nick and I both read seems like years ago.
Man,
And we're and we're finally catching up on it. Joe in the pilot seat, Nick as the co-pilot today, and actually, as usual, Nick is the brainiac of books, so he will lead the way on a lot of it. But we are so glad to have you back. This is chapter 92 or 91 of Rule of the Galaxy. So thank you for being a part of Rule of the Galaxy and Lothal Library. But Nick, so great for you to break away like me today and go record this show. How are you doing?
I'm doing great, Joe. I'm glad to be back on too. It feels like not only has it been a long time since we read this book, but it feels like it's been a long time since I was able to jump on the podcast. Just busy work season, gearing up for another school year. So just been a little bit crazy.
Yeah, life will tend to do that to you. You're facing one spectrum of it. I'm on the other end. My kids are all grown, and I'm facing new things of like what's it going to be like for the next 20 years with my wife and I, and are we going to have grandkids soon, and where are we going to travel? And you're facing well, and work obviously, and you're facing the startup end of it. So
Right. Which
I'm
if your dad has anything to say about it, you'll be having grandkids pretty soon. I got the whole spiel at your 50th birthday party about the pressure's on for Joey.
Well, we shall see about that. You know, that crazy kid has put a lot of things going on, and he's going like crazy. We were just in Pittsburgh last weekend for the celebrity softball game with the Steelers players. He's heading back out to Pittsburgh next weekend or next week
Wow.
for the Steelers training camp. Um, so yeah, you mix that in with Greg and Maddie having law school and starting new little companies on their own. You know, that grandkid thing seems to get further and further down the line. But I'm only 50, Nick.
Come
I'm
on.
told,
That's
uh,
young.
yeah, I'm told that's being a kid. So,
Yeah.
but enough of our life stuff there. I know you and I, like you said, we both have a ton going on, but I think it was months ago where we said, hey, let's pull some time together to do Darth Plagueis. And I tell you what, um, I've done a refresher course since then. I didn't reread the book since we initially tried it out, but you and I were talking beforehand. There is a ton that goes on in this novel.
So much. I wish I had it in front of me of how many years this book actually covers. But if I'm not mistaken, I mean, it goes from, oh gosh, what is it, 100 years before the Battle of Yavin, almost, all the way up to Attack of the Clones, if that's
Yeah,
right.
yeah, it gets deep into the prequel trilogy. Yeah, because obviously we don't see Darth Sidious until he's a teenager, or
Yeah,
Palpatine until he's a teenager. But Plagueis himself, I mean, this goes back to when he was a Padawan and was with Darth Tenebris, right? Um,
right. That's correct.
so yeah, it starts quite a ways back. But you know what? I'll throw out some quick. I thought some interesting notes that I pulled up because Darth Plagueis obviously holds a big role in Star Wars, although never being in a Star Wars movie except his name, right? I
Right.
mean, so the first mention we get, I believe, of Darth Sidious is in Star Wars Episode 3, Revenge of the Sith, when they're at the Opera House, and Palpatine says it was the legend of Darth Sidious to Anakin Skywalker, and that kind of started that path.
Or of Darth Plagueis.
Darth Plagueis. I'm sorry. Yes, Darth
Yeah,
Plagueis.
yeah, yeah,
Sorry,
yeah. Which
sorry.
is a pretty sweet
Yeah.
little monologue moment
Mm-hmm.
in Revenge of the Sith where he kind of cocks his head back and drops into his, storytelling.
I agreed. And I'm looking at it here. George, it's saying that the first draft where you see Darth Plagueis mentioned was in April of 2003. So Revenge of the Sith came out in 2005.
Yeah.
So that would make sense right there.
Right.
Um, then in the Rise of Skywalker novelization, I was surprised. I have not read that. Have you read that
I
novelization?
have. Oh,
Okay.
no, no, no. Sorry. Sorry. I thought you were saying Revenge of the Sith. No, I've not read Rise of Skywalker yet.
Okay. Well, neither have I. It was by Ray Carson. Ray Carson did the novelization, but Plagueis was brought up again, and part of the reason of going and seeing Palpatine at the beginning with Kylo Ren, they talked about how Palpatine had discovered some of Plagueis's secrets to immortality,
Hmm.
and so I thought, he used some of those during or pre his death in Return of the Jedi to keep this going. So I thought that was pretty interesting. I guess they said that there was a forced dyad between Plagueis and Palpatine,
Oh,
and
that would make
well, there
sense.
was an attempt at it, and Plagueis was not able to really connect on it. That's why he was so shocked and surprised with Ray and Ben Solo
Hmm.
with that. So, yeah, so just interesting things. But Darth Tenebris and Darth Plagueis are mentioned in other novels and so forth. In the expanded universe and everything. But yeah, just little things that stood out. That here's a character that all of us talk about and never been visually seen
Right.
in a Star Wars show or movie, I don't think. So,
No, I don't think so either. And I thought it was cool that they, again, the beauty of Star Wars, where you see, you know, the Empire is pretty xenophobic, doesn't really like alien species. And yet, Palpatine's master is a Mune, which I
right.
like. I like that he was, um, kind of this bad dude. The version of the Munes we get in Clone Wars are kind of this sheepish,
Right.
especially in the Tartakovsky 2003, just this like very like if a strong wind blows, I'll get knocked over, But to see like, no, this is actually a pretty bad dude.
Yeah.
I thought it was pretty cool.
No, I agree. And as we hop into the novel here, I think Darth Tenebris, his master was a Bith. So you had a Bith to a Mune, then to a human. So I thought that was a really cool transition in the Sith line there. But looking at this novel, it did come out in January of 2012, so obviously before the Disney purchase. It was originally slated to come out in October of 2008. I didn't know that,
I didn't either.
but it got bumped back, and I will read into it later. But it
Do
got
you
bumped
think
back
that's
for something.
because of the Clone Wars? Because
Could have been.
October 2008 is when Clone Wars launched.
Well, there you
So,
go.
like, there could have been I wonder if there's a tie-in with that at all. If you're listening and there's somebody who knows that, shoot us an email at rulethegalaxy@gmail.com and
Rule the
tell us.
Galaxy SW
Excuse
at
me. Yeah.
gmail.com. Yes.
Don't get it twisted.
Yeah. Yeah, I don't want somebody else getting our emails. So,
Yeah, right.
yeah, but looking at this, you were the one that kind of turned me on to this book because I always told you I'm the light side guy and I never wanted to read the dark stuff. So the Banes, the Plagueis, I was like, I got enough despair and depression in my life. Why do I want to read about these bad guys, right?
Right.
Um, but it is a great book. It does such a great job of walking you through, like you said, 100 years before A New Hope, and until the Attack of the Clones. And if Brent Dykman's listening, which I'm sure he probably will, is he always said this should be called Sidious instead of Plagueis
It's true.
because it tends to lean more towards once we get the ball rolling, it goes over to Palpatine and Sidious really leading the way over Plagueis in this. But we can jump in wherever you want. We can talk about it. I've got it broken down kind of a chapter by chapter thing, but overall, I will say this: I was blown away the first time I read the book. I loved everything about it. Um, it really pieced things together very well. Yes, I know it was post Revenge of the Sith, and we had that storyline laid out already, but I really liked how they took pieces that we would notice and put them all together into this book to make it get to the point that it got to.
Yeah, I agree. Especially, I think we're seeing in this book something that they would later do with Clone Wars season 7, right? Where like you're
Hmm.
getting a different vantage point of something that you already love. And
Right.
so, to see the inner workings, and we'll try to be spoiler free as much as we can throughout this, but to see some of the inner workings of what's going on with Palpatine during the Naboo crisis, what's going on, uh, in the 10 years leading up to Attack of the Clones, right? And seeing, I know the good guy version of this story, but to see what's happening on the other side of that and knowing oh my gosh, like he's got all these plans that the one that
Right.
gets thrown out sometimes is like, what if what if Naboo had not won, right? And like what if the Trade Federation had won? And to see him pivot his plans, I agree with you. It should be called Darth Sidious, especially the way this book opens with the prologue, which at first I didn't know if I liked it, but it's essentially, Sidious standing over the dead corpse of Tenebris, his master,
Hmm.
and just starts
You mean
right away with
Plagueis?
like, oh, sorry,
Yeah.
of Plague. Excuse me.
Right. We're
I
both
thought it was
doing
pretty
it.
cool.
We're both
Yeah,
doing it.
there's too many Darths flying
Yeah,
around here.
there are, and the names. I mean, Tenebris, Plagueis, Sidious. I mean, we're they're going to get intermingled in our head. Um, yeah, I would agree with you. I mean, well placed, well put together. I like the paperback version. Their like side jacket kind of explanation. Darth Plagueis, like all Sith lords before him, he craves absolute power, but like no Sith ever, he possesses the ultimate power over life and death.
Mm.
Darth Sidious in secret. See, it's even getting my words messed up. In secret, he masters the powers of the dark side while publicly climbing to the highest level of government office. One desires to rule supreme, the other dreams of living forever. Together, they will destroy the Jedi and rule the galaxy unless merciless Sith tradition uh, becomes their undoing. And I think, like you mentioned, when we start off and Plagueis is standing over the body of Tenebris as he's dying, one of the things he was itching to tell him was, okay, all the way back to Darth Bane, we've had this rule of two thing. Guess what? I'm getting rid of that because I
Yeah.
don't think it works.
Yep.
And the funny thing about it was he's telling Tenebris this, and you're thinking Tenebris is following the rules and this dogma, right? And then we find out a few chapters later that Tenebris had his own secret apprentice as a
Yes.
plan B off to the side the whole time.
Well, in true or false, he had a couple, right? That he was like trying. So he had like Venomous, and
Yep.
he had like one or two others that he was at least like probing to find, and then that kind of became the mission of Higo Damask,
Mm-hmm.
aka Darth Plagueis, to kind of eradicate these other disciples that he was training up to take his place.
Nope, I agree. And so you look at it from Darth Bane all the way till now, the Sith hide in plain sight, right? They're in the regular everyday life of things. They're businessmen, they're political people, all that kind of stuff. That's the way it's been. So here's Plagueis, who's the head. Like we said, he's immune, one of the heads of the banking clan, huge businessman, and people would have no idea that he's a Sith behind the scenes. But he's using that and he's showing Sidious or Palpatine how to use those same tools in the future, just in the political realm instead of the business realm. And I thought that was really well done because, here we are, you and I, we grow up and we see Darth Vader. Well, what is he? He's just a bad guy who's just chopping people up. And then we see
Yeah,
Phantom
right.
Menace and we see Darth Maul, who he's just a bad guy who just
Yep.
is one to fight. But the real Sith, the real enemy, is one that hides in plain sight and who's right there all along,
Right.
playing you like puppets instead of chopping you up with his lightsaber.
It's
So
definitely more strategic. Like
yes.
I thought reading this through, you can feel like the master politician that is pulling all the strings, that is, it's like you're playing
Mm-hmm.
chess and you're watching him just very quickly and quietly and carefully, accumulate wealth and power, and the things that he goes, no, like it's not just can I fight with a lightsaber, but it's can I, accumulate the power that I need to eventually, install a new chancellor and be a co-chancellor, right?
Right.
Like I thought it was very well done.
No, so after Plagueis kills his master, he stows away on a ship. I mean, so this shows you the duplicity here. Here's this businessman who, again, hide in plain sight. He stows away on a ship. Once he gets in there, he kills everybody off in there. Just
Right.
just destroys them. But he keeps the droid, 11-4D,
Yeah.
and keeps 11-4D as his assistant. And that assistant, once Plagueis gets a hold of Darth Venomous and defeats him, he was like, I'm not going to kill this one because we've talked about this, trying to create life and trying to become, immortal. I'm going to test this dark side power, force power person. I'm going to keep testing their body and testing their midichlorians and everything else to see if I can get them to the edge of death and bring them back, an edge of death and bring them back.
Right.
So he uses 11,4D to basically be his mad scientist assistant to help keep Venomous alive for years, making that, trying to get to that edge of life and death. So I thought that was really cool. I thought that was a
Yeah.
really good way to play, kind of like Dr. Frankenstein. He's got his lab over here
Yes.
where he's doing these tests.
Yep. And I thought, interesting comparison. The way that this book is written reminded me so much of the Bane books, not just because it's bad guys, but even in like some of the interactions they have. Like, you remember the second book of the Bane trilogy, Xana is going to, I don't remember what planet it is, but essentially, she kills the whole crew of that ship as well too, and kind of wrestles with this. I killed him. What we see here is a Sith that's further down the line,
Mm-hmm.
more indoctrinated, that's now like, harnessing the pain and suffering of the people that he's killing to revive himself, which starts some of these conversations of, man, could I live forever if I could just,
Right.
accumulate enough of this pain and suffering and live off it and almost feed off it. I thought it was an interesting read. I also think too, we haven't talked about it yet, but the brutality of this book
Very much
in
so.
accordance to what we saw in the Bane books, it felt very similar. Like these could almost exist in the same you know line, if that
Yeah.
makes sense.
I mean, 1,000 years apart, but still both ruthless killings going on, just
Yeah,
just to, you know, just to clean the deck. Hey, I want no witnesses. I
yeah,
want no evidence. Boom, we're just getting rid of things. So,
yeah.
I love how they, again, we start even before we meet Sidious or Palpatine, we start tying in the prequels. There's mining going on in Naboo, but Naboo doesn't want that to happen. They want to stay separate from, all these other business interactions. But Plagueis is able to pull some deals with some people who owe him some favors to where they can get some things done, to where they can get some mining done, right?
Right,
There on Naboo. So you're thinking, okay, now he's already playing games in Naboo and their politics. They had the banking clan involved. They had the Trade Federation, I believe, was starting to be mentioned,
right,
and so you have that going on, and that's when he meets a young Palpatine who wants to be different from his family, wants to be different from his father for sure. His father's an isolationist, wants Naboo to stay sovereign, no interaction with anybody else. While Palpatine's like, no, we need to be doing this. We need to be taking chances. And they hated each other. He and his father did not care for each other at all. So I think it's really good. We wrap it in. We see him as a teenager, and he already starts to sense that he's got something different, something special about him. So I'll
right.
let you run
And
with that.
and I think it's interesting that, like, the prequels get crapped on for their political flavor. Where it's kind of like, what 7-year-old wants to watch a movie full of like trade negotiations and you know embargoes and stuff like that. But I felt like this book did a really good job of managing both while keeping it interesting enough. Like, I believe it's, if it's not here, it comes further, like, as Plagueis begins to get more involved in the politics of Naboo, just seeing the leveraging and the kind of
Mm-hmm.
political masterminding that he starts to use to say, which this was eye opening for me reading this book back, because the question that I always had uh, before reading the book was, okay, so the Trade Federation is blocking trade of what? Like we get the whole Phantom Menace, and I don't think one time they explain, like, yeah, we've set up a blockade to stop you from getting supplies, but also, like, what are you trying to get out?
Mm-hmm.
And to kind of get some explanation as to the fact that it's a plasma that essentially is
Uh,
underneath the that's underneath the capital city of Theed, that they're going to start mining and exporting off world, uh, you know, to
Hold on
kind of
one
get at
second. Yeah.
it. I got to find it as well too, because I think it was something,
Yeah. Plasma located beneath the surface of Naboo. Yeah.
yeah, some sort of plasma that they were like getting out of there. And for me, that was helpful because it was like, okay, this explains why this little tiny backwater world is so sought after. And I feel like that's a chord that resonates with maybe us as 21st century, you know, big bad corporation going into place that has a viable natural resource, mining the heck out of it, just deposing whatever king they can depose
Right.
to, because Hugo Damask literally sets up an insurrection almost to get that king booted out of there so that they can get somebody who's more open to what you said, expansion and, connecting. Come on, come trade with us. It'll be great.
Right. No, and so I loved it because, again, like you said, they were planting those seeds of how he was going to manipulate Naboo, even way back then when he first met Palpatine. So
Right.
that I thought that was really cool. I think what was very interesting was with that anger and hatred between Palpatine and his father, Plagueis could sense that. He could tell what was going on there. He was trying to drive a wedge even deeper and further in between them to separate them. While at the same time, Palpatine's father could notice this closeness between Palpatine and Hugo Damask, which he didn't know him as Plagueis, and it comes out and together where he says, "Hey, be my apprentice. Start working with me. And let me help you get involved with politics. Let me start making connections for you and all that stuff." And I forget how did it happen to where, and look, throwing to say we're not going to give spoilers. Guess what? It's been 9 years since this
We're
book
going to give
came
some
out.
spoilers.
Yeah.
If
So
you've not read it yet, sucks.
because Palpatine's father was against him with Plagueis, and Plagueis, and here Palpatine couldn't stand his father in the direction he wanted to go. He goes on a ship with his family and decides to kill his entire family and the honor guard that was protecting them when he unleashed all of his hatred and anger towards them and came to his full force abilities. And that really, I mean, he was he was going to become a Sith. He was becoming, but that right there kind of focalized all that into that one moment to where you can brutally murder your family, brutally murder the honor guard, and really all because of his disagreements and his hatred with his father and vice versa.
Right.
And but of course Plagueis was totally happy with that, and they found a way to hide it, cover it up, all those kind of things, to where he didn't seem. That was another good part of it. They kept hiding whether it was somebody Plagueis had killed or somebody Sidious had killed.
Right.
Their political connections and their Sith powers, they do everything they could to hide that throughout the whole time. But I mean, thinking about, we just saw Plagueis at the beginning kill an entire ship of people, take the ship, and then get away with all of that. Now we have Sidious years later doing the same
Right.
thing, except with his family.
Right. And I feel like you start to see like mirroring happening between this book and between what ultimately Sidious would do to Anakin, right?
Mm-hmm.
Where like we wouldn't have time to get into all of it, but the idea that Plagueis is manipulating him by creating some dissent. There's already dissent between his father, but
Mm-hmm.
instead of being like a good mentor who would try to help, he seeds some more or sows some more seeds of dissent between the two of them. Kind of starts meeting with him secretly. Dad catches whiff of it which I thought was a cool little, nugget on Chandrila. I think that's the name of the planet.
Yeah, Chandrila. Yeah.
Yeah, which we would get later in the sequels, but also in the Aftermath series where they would set up like the new
Right.
capital. But Dad flips and goes, "Hey, you're not only not staying here on Chandrila, or however you say it, I'm taking you to a school somewhere else." And it's in the middle of that heated argument that, like you said, brutally just, using the force too, like slamming his dad against a wall and, and then reaches out desperately to who's the only person that's still got your back,
Yep.
Plagueis, and says, "I've done something horrible. I killed my family," where he's met with the open arms of, "It's okay. They deserved it. Come be my apprentice," kind of thing. I thought, but then fast forward on that, and is that not almost the same path that Anakin ends up taking with him someday too? Of, "Hey, I've groomed you. I'm your trusted confidant. Help me help you. Kind of thing." And then it leads Anakin to a point where he kills Mace Windu in a moment of passion, right? As well.
Right.
That's, "What have I done?" He's like, "Well, now you better be my apprentice."
You are correct, because at that time, like I said, we knew he was leading. We knew he was going to end up being a Sith, but it was that act where he came back and he said, "Hey, it's what was supposed to happen. And oh, by the way,
Right.
you're now Darth Sidious." Oh, okay. I mean,
Right.
so he revealed himself as being the Sith and set him up there. I like how after that it jumps years, years where now he's training
Right.
in the dark side. He's slowly working his way up through the government with the help of Hugo Damask and the banking clan. They're helping him along the way, but he took a trip and didn't tell Plagueis about it. If I'm not mistaken, he took it on his own with Sate Pesage, who was, I believe, in the sequels as a character,
Yep.
as like his guardian or his partner or whatever. But he arranges a trip to the Dathomir, of all places.
That's right.
He gets there, and if I'm not mistaken, and again going off memory here, if I'm not mistaken, he meets a Dathomirian woman, and she can sense that he has the Force. She
Yeah.
can sense that he has the Force, and she knows what's going to happen to her son if he stays there on that planet. And
Yeah.
she's like, "You need to take him and be his guardian and help him get him away from here. This is going to be terrible here." And while still playing the good Force user kind of, oh, okay, I'll be his mentor, I'll be his guardian, he started playing right in with, well, this is my chance to get myself a freshly born Sith, or Force sensitive user that I can train in my own way, which then becomes Darth Maul. It wasn't at the time, but we find out years later that turned into Darth Maul, and Plagueis knew nothing about it. So I thought that was really cool. That again, here we are talking about all these things intermingling into the prequels, and we have Darth Maul brought to life into the Plagueis novel.
Right. And I thought it was cool. Again, just the amount of different worlds that they go to in this book are staggering. But to go to there, you get insight into the origin of Darth Maul, which I think everybody's interested in, right? Whether they would say it or not, because of the amount of comics, the amount of books that they've written on his origin story, to get a true, here's Darth Maul as a baby in a bag you know, given to Palpatine, and then he raises him in secret. I think you're spot on.
Well, I mean, let's face it. How many times have we talked about it where it seems like someone who's either lost a parent or is an orphaned or whatever? I think Ryan talked about it, Massengale, how that seems to draw out even more power, whether it's good or bad, um, from them in the Force. It's like having that break in their family, having that
Mm,
breakdown of their family makes them rely more on their powers, makes them
right,
rely more on their mentor that they get than just being very powerful in the Force.
right,
So I thought that was interesting, and an interesting way for Maul to be brought into the story. Um, you know, I'm trying to remember the part. Sidious had a friend from Naboo. Was Sidious the one who had him killed off, or was Plagueis the one who had him killed off? Because it was the senator. It was a current sitting senator, if I'm not
yeah.
mistaken. Do you
I
remember
think
which one it was?
I think Sidious had him killed, if I remember correctly.
Okay. Yeah, I thought that was a really good storyline though, because here was he was showing him his friendship, but he knew deep down to get things done the way he wanted them to get done, he was going to
Right,
have to be taken out.
right.
And then his son, if I'm not mistaken, was Force sensitive. Was he not a Jedi? The senator's son was a Jedi, so he didn't
He,
talk to him.
and that's why he came back,
Hmm.
because that's right. It's all coming back to me, which is a really cool point. I'm glad you hit that and brought that, because for me, again, one of the things that I think is so cool about this story is you talk about, hiding in plain sight, the amount of interactions that
Hmm.
Plagueis and Sidious both have with the Jedi throughout this book, right? Like they
Oh yeah.
meet with that small group on Sereno, right? And it's Jocasta Nu, who we all know, right? It's Qui-Gon Jinn's there, Count Dooku's there, Cypher Diaz is there.
Oh yes.
And, he's having these full-blown conversations with them, and they have no clue that the Dark Lord of the Sith is not only here, but he's, sitting right at our table. And even in the, from what you're talking about, I can't remember his name, but the Jedi who you know, was a Jedi, and then his dad was a senator that was killed, that comes back. He has countless interactions with him again as well. And I just think it's very cool, again, that we're hiding in plain sight. You have no clue, which speaks volumes about the sequels as well, too, where Luke cuts himself off from the Forces and able to like wall himself off so you can't feel it or see it. I'd be curious, are they doing that? Are
Yeah.
they masking that? How are they doing that?
Well, no, I think not only was it a good test for them to see, but it was also making them grow in their their own hubris, right? They were
Right.
starting to see, look, these are fools. I'm playing this game. I'm going to play this game right in front of them, and they're not even going to notice. So it made them more confident, made them more to where
Right.
they were like, I know what I can do now because I hear what they say. What are the rules they have to follow? Well, if they have to follow those rules, I know how to use those rules against them. I know how to
Right.
push their buttons to where I can get the most out of them before they even sense anything about me. So I thought that was really really great, and I'm glad we did bring that up because I completely forgot. I mean, to think about all the things we're talking about being tied in, here's Qui-Gon, who's he could tell he's not the typical Jedi. He's seeing things in a different way.
Right.
He knows right away that he can use Sifo Dyas as a pawn. He can tell that he's kind of a broken character, and he can use him for things he wants done. And at the same time, he can tell there's something not right in the Jedi ways with Count Dooku. I mean, he
Right.
could tell it right from the beginning, like, I'm going to put this in my back pocket because this might be a good card to play later on. And,
Right.
Dooku, as always, if just like we saw in the sequel or in the prequels, you know, we'll do it my way. I can do this. I'll get this done. He's very competent, do it his own way, all that kind of stuff. He could see he was breaking from the Jedi in all their different little rules there. So I thought that was really good. And it's just amazing to me now looking back at this book. And again, we're doing this a lot off memory and some off some quick notes and chicken scratch here. That's even more layers that they've added in. So the
Right.
planets they visit, the species they bring in, the Jedi they bring in. I mean, that's just layer upon layer of stories leading into the prequels that I think really a Star Wars fan. Now that I'm saying this, and I did not read it until 2020, the first time I read it again in 2021. But to think that I watched the prequels and didn't go back and have this right away to go look at, this
Yeah.
would be
Right.
something to really mix in with that when you're watching the prequels is to read this.
That's so true. And almost to like, if there was a way that you could like pair it out where you could read what's going on in real time while you watch the movies. I had that thought reading this back of, man, how cool would it be to go back through the prequels now and watch that kind of happen? It's going to drive me nuts until I remember whose dad that Jedi was. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah,
I'm gonna have to go back and reread this book again, I guess, because
you're all
I
right.
forget.
You and I are both, like I said, we've got notes. I've got some quick printed cliff notes here, and going
Right.
off the notes that I had written down. I mean, there's a lot in this book.
So
Um,
much.
and then we talk about it. All that's going on, and with the experiments going on, we have, um, gosh, was Plagueis, and I'm going to ask you because I don't want to mess this up. Had he been injured already before we jump to the next part, or is he injured later as we get closer to?
No, he's injured later
Okay.
because he is. If I'm trying to, he so first of all, let's be clear. He is attempted to be assassinated multiple times in this
Mhm.
book. I think it happens twice. In the first one, he's injured, and he's that's the injury that he gets where he has to take on the breathing apparatus, and this is what actually really pushes him into his search for immortality
Mhm.
and really go full force into the midichlorian or the M word, as the Mandalorian would say. Uh, but yeah, he's attempted to be. It's again all this political maneuvering that he's doing leads to a point which again I don't know why I can't remember who tries to kill him the first time, but I think it's a group from Malistaire. Is that correct?
There is a group. There's a group. Here it is. The Canted Circle
That's it.
ceremony. Yes.
Yep,
Um, it was Maladian assassins.
that's
Maladian
right.
assassins. Yes. And that's where Plagueis comes, or yeah, Sidious comes and finds him,
Yep,
with his pals and saves him. But he's really on death's door
that's
after
right.
after those things. Um,
Right.
And after years of keeping, at the same time, after years of keeping Darth Venomous alive, the experiments finally run out, and he finally sees that he's tapped out completely, and he lets Venomous die because he's
Right.
been keeping him in a tube basically for years testing, and finally his body is just shot, and he's like, you know what, I'm done with you. I can't get you to, I can't get what I need out of you, so I'm just letting you go. So for
Right.
listeners, I apologize for bouncing around, but this was a lot to take in this book. And if you haven't read it, we're hitting the high notes of it. But there's just a ton in there, and there's a lot going on. So
Right.
um, one
Right.
of the go
I
ahead.
would say the turning point in this book is after that first assassination attempt, where then he kind of becomes a recluse
Mm-hmm.
and really throws himself into. And this is where I think even reading it off the inside flap jacket that you just read, one who's craving to be in power and one who's craving to live forever,
Correct.
and where you really see that division between master and apprentice. Of the apprentice is like, let's figure out how do we run this thing, and the master's like, why don't we just live forever, and then it'll take care of itself and we don't have to worry about it. And he dives thoroughly into that. I think that's, for me, is it's almost like part one and part two, and the
Oh
first
yeah.
assassination attempt is where it feels like it moves into part two.
So I love it that they jump from after Venomous dies, and now that he's become a recluse, then they jump, and it says, I'm reading some quick notes. More than 2 decades pass as
It's
Palpatine gains
crazy.
more power in the Senate as the reign of Supreme Chancellor Finis Valorum comes to an end. So it takes us all the way up with all the manipulating, all the things he's doing behind the scenes, and to right into the Phantom Menace. And this quick little note says the rest of the novel tells events depicted in other pre-existing Star Wars stories, such as Jedi Council Act of Wars, Cloak of Deception, Star Wars Darth Maul, and Darth Maul Shadowhunter, until it rejoins and does its own new story again back in the Phantom Menace and goes from
Yes.
there. Because he then Palpatine again plays his role of getting rid of a king on Naboo, King Ars Varuna, um, thus allowing Palpatine to have a teenaged uh, Padme Amidala elected as the planet's queen. So we've
Right.
jumped from teenage Palpatine at the beginning of this book to now here we are to the stories that we all know, where we see behind the scenes how he makes his little deals with the devil to make her become the queen of Naboo.
Right. Right. Which I think, again, to be able, like, I don't know very many books that can jump forward that many years as seamlessly as they did and kind of bring you along. And you're right, the amount of supplemental material that they have in between that time period.
Mm-hmm.
Uh, I was at our library not too long ago and looking at, there's like a Darth Maul trilogy
Yep.
that takes place in between that time. It's just, Legends is crazy. I mean, as far as
Oh
how
yeah.
much content exists and how much was actually out there, it's mind blowing. I'm glad you brought up the King Varuna part as well too, though, because I thought that was very cool in the sense of we're back on Naboo.
Mm-hmm.
The king that we originally brought in is not moving things along in the way that we want it to, and so now we need to get rid of him because he attempts a second assassination attempt on Plagueis.
And was that Palpatine doing that? I can't remember on that, or was that the
No,
king who
so
put that on?
Plagueis ends up goes and kills Varuna because Varuna attempted
There we
a
go.
nuclear bombardment of Sojourn. Remember that?
Mm-hmm. Yep.
And he
So
attempted to have him. This is where you get Black Sun and Gardula the Hutt and all again, like the amount of stuff that gets thrown into this book. I know we're probably not doing it justice, but there's so much, from Jabba the Hutt reigning on Tatooine, and all in this time
gosh, I
uh,
forgot about that
you see
section.
Plagueis backing Palpatine now, which makes Gardula angry, which makes all these different systems start fighting with each other. And so then you see uh, Plagueis attempted to be killed a second time. And now he's like, okay, it's the king of Naboo that tried to have me taken out. So now I'm going to go kill him.
So speaking of that, you hit that right on the head because even while all this is going on, and he's making her the queen, he's already putting in the ear, whispering in the ear of Sifo Dyas, you know, with all these problems that are going on that you just discussed, and these infighting over here, and this infighting over here, and these people threatening to leave the Republic over here, he's starting the war between the Separatists and the Republic
Right.
on his own. He's playing them against each other just like he does individuals, but he's doing it with whole systems and whole species of people. He's at the same time whispering in the ear to play Sifo Dyas. Let's maybe you should go push for that to happen. The government might not want that to happen, but gosh, the Jedi might need this to happen, and look what's happening out in society. So you have that going on, and at the same time, he's putting bugs in the ear of Count Dooku at the same time of we're looking at things the same way. Others don't look at them the same way as us. The way
Right.
you're seeing the galaxy, I get it, and I see that living those Jedi rules might not work for you to live that way. So amazing that one book, not a trilogy, but
Yeah.
one book has all this stuff in it. I mean, it's just
Yeah.
crazy to think about. Now that I'm reading back through all the notes, I'm thinking, my gosh, how do they fit all this? And this was James Luceno, correct?
Yes. Who did
And,
the first Tarkin book?
yes.
Yeah.
I
Which
mean,
was also very good.
he's great. He's great.
But it's crazy. Yes, it's a lot of content. Yes, there's a lot of back and forth that's going on. But I made the comment earlier earlier when I was writing down some of these notes, the idea of this is the hardest working man of the prequels right here, right? Like just manipulating and pulling all these things together. It's mind blowing. And at the same point, the one we didn't hit on before we get all the way to the death of Varuna
mm-hmm.
is his study into the influence of midichlorians, and not just trying to keep himself alive, but trying to create life as well too. Because I can see why Disney went, "Hey, we're going to pull this from Legends and kind of make that a thing." Because with and this maybe is the major spoiler alert, between him and Palpatine together trying to influence the Force,
Right.
true or false, he ends up essentially creating Anakin.
That
It's
was brought up.
inferred.
Yes, it's saying that could have happened because he was testing out the midichlorians on how to create life in multiple areas of the galaxy. I mean, it wasn't
Right.
just in his lab. He was doing things to try to create life in other places. So it is inferred in this book, which maybe contradicts what Disney does want to say. But then again, with having the sequel trilogy, maybe it's not. With
Yeah.
having
Oh, now that I
Palpatine
think
back
about it,
around.
there's a Darth Vader comic where we see
Yep.
uh it's like a flashback, but you see Palpatine with his hands around Shmi's belly in a very weird way, but like kind
Mm-hmm.
of almost like claiming responsibility for the creation of Anakin, which again, I think this book it covers science, it covers politics, it covers the action that you're looking for. Like I mean, it covers a variety of different things.
It does. One of the things that I had forgotten about was that as Plagueis had gotten closer to death, and as he was so interested in trying to create life and become immortal, he had given up on sleep.
Yes, that's
He
right.
had given up on sleep, and he had made it to where he wasn't going to sleep because he was afraid, either he'd die or somebody would kill him in his sleep or whatever. And Sidious, that's where he came in and said, I'll make you co-chancellor.
Yeah,
Let's,
right.
I'm going to be chancellor. I'm chancellor. I'll make you co-chancellor. Now that we've gotten to this point, we're here. You rest. You go ahead and rest. And as he's going to rest, that's when, like he said in the show or in the movie, Revenge of the Sith, you know, killed him in his sleep, right?
Yeah,
Except I don't think he was officially asleep when he did it because he was awake and he was telling him, it was like behind the scenes, I've been doing this the whole
yeah,
time. I've been pulling the strings. You thought it was you. I'm the one who's got a clone army being built. I'm
yeah.
the one that's cutting this deal over here. I'm the one who's making Amidala the queen of. So he's like, I'm playing you while you thought, you were mastering me, and while he was killing him. So I thought that was really cool.
Yeah. When he
That
gets him drunk,
is that what it is?
he starts
Yes.
giving him wine and he starts saying, like, okay, tomorrow I'm going to step up and I'm going to give my speech. Where after, again, it's a very fast synopsis of the book, but after he, gets elected to chancellor,
Mm-hmm.
saying essentially, tomorrow when I get elected as chancellor, here's my speech that I'm going to give, to kind of set the tone for our co-chancellorship. And Plagueis keeps saying, hey, no, listen, I'm tired. I'm tired. Like, let's be done. Let's be done. Let's be done. Palpatine keeps pumping him full of wine. It kind of leads him to just let his guard down just a little bit.
Right.
Uh, and when he lets his guard down just enough, Palpatine just full force lightnings him. Like in kind of like mid speech talking, all of a sudden turns and just like zaps him.
See, there's so much to forget and so much to remember all at the same time on this. I love that because of the testing, like you said, and it was inferred that Anakin Skywalker might have been created by those Force tests and midichlorian tests that Plagueis was doing. That it ends with while this is going, and while he's lost Maul, and while he's got Dooku as his new second in command, or he's working him that way, the whole time he's like, you know what? I'm kind of more interested in this Anakin Skywalker.
Yep.
This is right after the Battle of Naboo. This is right after when he pats him on the head and says, we'll watch your career, or whatever.
Yep.
You probably know the words better than me.
We'll watch your career with great interest.
There you go. See?
Yeah.
Right around that time, he's like, I'm going to keep a hold of this one because I really see something here. And if he is because of those tests and the Sith magic that Plagueis was trying to do, he's going to be the one I want by my side.
Right.
And now that he saw that he was Padawan to Obi-Wan, he was like, this is great because what has he done his whole time? He's dealt with a Jedi. Like you said, he's interacted with Jedi. So what a perfect way for him to continue that and just have that right there with Anakin. So
yeah, right.
So I mean, they lead you right to that. That's where they lead you to is he's thinking, okay, I've lost Maul. I've killed my master. I'm the Chancellor. I'm gonna go lean on Dooku right now and tell him to be my right hand man. But really, he's just an interim person. I'm just using him as a piece. Plus, he knows how much of a leader he is.
Yeah.
And with being a leader and being from Sereno, where he's from, where they are already a rebellious group that kind of moves away. They were doing it back in the days of Darth Bane and Darth Xana. Yep. He knows he can get him and his group to go create the Separatists for real.
Right.
It's all that machination of that put together happen. It's brought to the end of this. So we're basically to start of Attack of the Clones with this, right? We know where it's going. He's going to talk to Anakin. Dooku's his right hand man. I just, if you think about it, we've run through in 45 minutes. We've run through a book that covers 100 years time.
It's crazy. There's so much that we didn't do justice. If you're on the fence about reading this book, it's worth going and looking at. Even for, I would say, for the prologue and the epilogue of this book. The epilogue, if I remember correctly, is actually an interaction with Anakin, Obi-Wan, and Palpatine. And so it's fast forwarded a little bit after the Battle of Naboo, and they come in, and you can already see Obi-Wan kind of snipping at Anakin. And you see, again, this pattern that we talked about already, this idea of I am the safe, supportive figure that you can come and talk to about anything.
Yep.
I'm like your dad, the dad that you never had, right? And yet, when the moment comes, I'm going to ask something of you, and you're going to say yes to me because I've built you up as this character. And so he essentially says something to what you were talking about of, we'll watch your career, but essentially like, this is going to be the one that's going to help me eventually become my apprentice.
Nope. I agree 100%. It was well done on both of those. Some behind the scenes stuff. We asked about it, and sure enough, I pulled it up here in these notes, and there was things about the cancellation and the bringing it back. In 2007, they announced they were going to have the book, and as we got closer to it, they announced Plagueis was immune, all that. They were putting it together, and at the last minute in 2007, 2008 timeframe, they said, nope, we're pulling the plug. We don't feel like that's the right time to have the story of Darth Plagueis told. And instead, the book Darth Bane Rule of Two was released in its spot. So they did that. And then in 2010, Lucasfilm came back out and said, hey, you know what? That was a good book. It was going well. We had it all in place. We're going to release it. Give us a little time. We're going to put it back out there. And then they released a few more books with the new Jedi Order and some other things. And then, boom, 2012, they brought it back out. Let's see. Darth Plagueis was first set to be a first-person narrative. Sidious would have found Plagueis holocron shortly after he murdered his master, and it would have retold Plagueis' story, like Anne Rice's The Vampire Chronicles, and things like that. But they decided to go in a different way. So, so a lot went on there. I had no idea in 2007 or 2008 that was even going on. And let's backtrack this 13 years. You are how old right now?
28.
28. So 13 years. I wasn't your age, but I was much younger, and I had plenty of little kids running around. So for me to get in all the books that I wanted to at that time was nearly impossible.
Yeah, right,
So putting the bad guy books on the back burner made it easier for me.
right, right.
But I slap myself on the wrist all the time, thinking, how did I bypass this book with all that it brings to the table, how deep it goes in, and just like the Clone Wars, if you read this book and if you read Master and Apprentice and all that, the prequels become even better.
Yes.
There's so many things that they try to fit in the prequels over a 30-year time frame or whatever that it's hard to put all that in. So having all this backstory really does help, and it makes every character better. And Brent will tell you over and over again, and he gets ticked. It always comes back to Palps. It's
Always comes
always
back
comes
to
back to
Palps.
Palps.
Who's the
So
real bad guy here? It's Palps. But I agree with you. It enriches and it deepens your experience of something you already love. And I don't know, for me, everybody talks about headcanon. This book to me is canon until I get something else that replaces this. Right. And
yes,
even then, this may still remain in my head as canon. Now I'm hoping and I'm praying if the timeline works out. Again, you said we've covered 100 years. Acolyte, which will be coming out not too long, should be right about this same time period. And the description, if I'm remembering from one of our previous shows, is not this. It's almost like a mystery drama.
mm-hmm,
Is that correct?
yep. But it is going to be on the darker side. But while you said that, one of the descriptions of the book, and I don't know if I already read it to you or not, but one of the descriptions of the book talks about how Darth Sidious is the acolyte to Darth Plagueis. So to
Mm,
have that I mean, how often have you heard that word? I
yeah,
mean,
right,
we hear it in Rise of Skywalker about the Sith acolytes out there on
right.
Exegol. We hear about it in this new story that's going on Disney Plus, but to see it in the description, and I'll find it that Sidious was the acolyte for Darth Plagueis.
Yep.
That to me just it's too meaty, too much meat on the bones to not say that's not connected somehow.
Yeah, it would be a hard bypass to name it that, say it's going to be in that time period and not cover that, especially with what you said of it always comes back to Pops. Like always, always, always. And somewhere Brent is rolling his eyes knowing, man, it might come back to that. But it's true.
It is, it is. So I mean, let's retract here. We see Naboo, Coruscant, Dathomir. We see Darth Maul, Darth Plagueis, Darth Sidious. We see Qui-Gon, Dooku, Sifo Dyas. I'm trying to think of other things that played key roles. Uh, you know, those are a lot of key characters, a lot of key planets, a lot of key species,
Yeah.
all in this one book. And James Luceno, hats off to fit all this information in one story and in one book, because I I've read the Darth Bane trilogy now, and I feel like this could have been easily made into a trilogy of books if you'd have
Easily.
broken down uh, uh, Darth Tenebris and Plagueis for a book. The middle years with
Yeah.
Plagueis and Sidious together, and then the later years leading into the prequels. You could have made that even more meaty, or you could have made it more flowery and filled in with more fluff. But
Right.
this was nonstop, chapter after chapter.
Yeah. It never slowed down even
No.
for a second, which I think is why I like it so much. It's fast paced. And I remember the first time I think it was 2015 I read this and I had the audiobook of it. And I remember I was walking on a track somewhere and listening to it, just going, whoa, oh my gosh, like an idiot with my headphones in. But it was that good.
Well, yeah. Well, no, I agree. I agree. And look, while we do these, we are not professionals and we're not book editors. We're not, people who do professional reviews. We just did this because we talked about it when we first started doing Lothal libraries. We're not going to do a book on Lothal library unless we think it's a 10.
Yeah,
And
right.
I mean, This book, as well as the Bane books, and what other books did we do? Oh, Dark Disciple.
Dark
Um,
Disciple. Yep.
those books have to be up there. We talk about a Mount Rushmore of characters, Mount Rushmore of
Yep.
movies. These books have to be in the Mount Rushmore of the books.
I agree.
And at some point in time, we should do the air the or the Zahn original
Oh,
trilogy
that would be
and
great.
do those, because I think that would be fun to go back and refresh that.
So let me ask you this question, maybe the last question before we jump off. But the
Yeah.
the thought in my mind is, so I'm taking these books that I love, right? The Bane trilogy, this really good, rich, meaty stories.
Mm-hmm.
I'm I can't help but compare it to some of the new High Republic stuff that's coming out, right? And
Mm-hmm.
in my mind, I'm having a bit of a, and maybe I'm the only person that feels this way, but I'm having a hard time getting into some of the High Republic stuff because it's not Jedi versus Sith. Now, I've not read Rising Storm yet. I haven't gotten into that. I don't know if that's any good,
No, no, no Sith in there.
but it's not Jedi versus Sith. Whereas these books, like if I ask the question, what's the commonality? There's this presence of, ultimate good, ultimate bad,
Mm-hmm.
battling it out, as opposed to ultimate good versus space pirates. And I'm having a hard time reconciling both those. Not saying that they're bad. I'm just saying I don't get into them quite as easily or naturally as this.
Yeah, no, I finished Rising Storm. Um, it was a good book. I'm not gonna say it was up there on this level or anything, but it was a good, entertaining book.
Hmm.
There are definitely some Jedi characters that I really enjoy. Um, but I'm having a hard time with it too.
Yeah.
It's m- I don't know, maybe when I get all the way through it, maybe when it's all the way done, before we head an acolyte, the story will have tied up and I'll be like, oh, okay, now this all together
Yep. And
makes
it came
me
full circle or something.
yeah. But right now, yeah, I'm enjoying them, but it's more of a hey, I'm filling my time until the next big thing that I'm really going to be interested in. I will give any Star Wars a try. I watched
Yeah, I
Resistance.
agree.
I watched Star Wars Droids. All those things. But I mean, again, they're much more books that are like six or sevens instead of
Yeah.
tens. But you never know. It might change my mind when it gets 20 books in, and I go, okay, now I see.
Yeah.
Because there are characters that I really enjoy, but I just don't. I think the reason a book like this works, Plagueis, is because we have the other materials, the Clone
I
Wars,
agree.
the movies, things like that.
Yep.
I think High Republic would work best if we had a movie or a Disney Plus series or
Yep.
an animated series that was tied into it to where I could say, okay, once a week or once every 6 months or once every year, I've got something I can see of this, and then I can read the things in between.
Yep. And I can build some, like, even I asked the question to somebody the other day of like, okay, the original Throne trilogy worked and it introduced a bunch of new characters and it's not Jedi versus Sith, but it still has familiarity of like people you already know.
Right. Right.
So I don't know. Time will tell.
Well, I plan on tomorrow's show. I'll do a quick 5-10 minute synopsis of Rising Storm. Again, Kevin Scott wrote a good book. It's very entertaining. The characters are good, but I think the key to all of it is it's not connecting without the visual. And Brent's right.
Yeah.
Look, if we wouldn't have the 3 Star Wars movies,
Yeah.
would all the expanded universe have meant anything like it means to us without those? Right.
Yeah. Maybe not. Probably
So
not.
if I
Probably.
would have read the Star Wars novels, New Hope, Empire Strikes Back, and Return of the Jedi, and that was it, and never see them on screen or have a figure
Yeah.
of them or whatever, I don't know. I can't tell you that
Yeah.
because,
Who knows?
yeah.
Because it
So,
happened that way.
but man, thank you so much for taking time
Yeah.
out of your
Thank you.
day. Thanks. I know we buzzed through it, and I apologize because I want us to sound so detail oriented, but honestly, if we did
Hard
detail
with a book
oriented,
like this.
we'd be here all day doing this.
Yeah.
So that's why the audiobooks take 12 and 13 hours for
Yeah.
them. So but I appreciate it. Always good to connect with you.
Same.
We'll get some other shows going. I know you and Sam will do another Clone Wars Chronicles sometime soon. um I'm glad things are going well with you and your family and all that right now. And I know we had craziness, so I'm glad, everything's going okay right now. But let's just keep this Star Wars love going. So,
Let's do it. Thanks for
but
having me on.
you got it. Appreciate it, guys. Thanks. I know we buzzed through Plagueis, but follow us at Rule the Galaxy SW on Twitter. Email us ruletheGalaxySW@gmail.com. You know what? Nick will do another Clone Wars Chronicles, and you can hear professional guy him with
Oh my
professional
gosh,
guy
stop.
Sam do
Listen,
that
even
instead
if
of
we
me
were
rambling.
professional and the risk of not going on another 10-hour podcast, like you would need that long to explain this book adequately. So if you're angry, you can blame me for not being as prepared with my notes.
No, you're good, man. Guys, thanks so much. And until the next time we do a Lothal Library, may the Force be with you.